San Antonio is one of the fastest growing cities in Texas. What's your plan to manage this growth while maintaining affordability and infrastructure quality?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it's really important. San Antonio is the loudest voice about San Antonio's future. And I think this is important, right, between myself and my opponent. We have been asked at several forums, do we agree or do we disagree with the state's attempts to limit control of cities? There was a San Antonio Express News survey that asked this question, and Rolando said that he supported the state's actions to curb local control. We were just at a forum a couple of days ago, Cops Metro. We were asked the same question, and he said that he opposed that, right? So look, I think it's really important that the mayor of San Antonio is focused on serving San Antonio. This is not a hard question. I've been very clear that we should determine our own future, and we should push back when there are attempts at the federal level, at the state level, to limit our ability to say what our future looks like. So I think that's first and foremost. When we're thinking about the growth of our community, I think it's really important that we are making some foundational investments. We talk a lot about some of our long-term inequities, which is why I'm so focused. First 100 days, right? I know folks have heard me talk about the things I want to work on in the first 100 days. And one of those, again, is how much talent are we leaving on the table as a result of not fully meeting the need for pre-K in our community, for example. And then let's talk about the bill. Because I think, again, there are costs to not doing these things. We also know that the smartest investment is always going to be in smart and healthy kids. So that's just an example, I think, of a very pragmatic opportunity that we should take to ensure that we are setting our community up for long-term success. I think I've also, shared with you that the programs that I want to take a really hard look at to make sure that they're actually delivering in the way that they were sold to voters. One of those programs, again, is the Ready to Work program. When you tell me, 2,000 folks-ish have gone through that program and 25% of those folks are still not in an approved job after 12 months, again, we've got to really make sure we're getting the rate of return on these investments. And then we've got an excellent opportunity as a community to look at the 27 bond and make sure that those investments in our infrastructure are really addressing the needs throughout our city. To ensure that everybody feels that they are invested in and seen by their leadership. So we have a great opportunity and exciting, potentially very exciting projects like Project Marvel, that a generational investment that we could also use to address some of our generational inequities. So it's a very exciting time, but as many folks know, leadership is going to make all the difference as we move forward.
Speaking of Project Marvel, it's projected to cost up to $4 billion with significant portions potentially funded by public money through hotel and rental car taxes, the TERS, the tax increment reinvestment zones, and the PFZ, the project financing zone. Do you support allocating these public funds for this project?
I think it's really important that we first start off with, frankly, how the regular person in our community is hearing this conversation. And what we are not hearing nearly enough of is how the city and the community is going to benefit from these investments, okay? Because folks know, they remember, again, the history with the Alamo Dome and with the AT&T Center, where some of those promises weren't necessarily kept, right? And so I think it's important we start off with how is the community going to benefit? And I think that's actually a way in which we can bring people along much faster. How do we benefit from this? Certainly everybody wants to keep the spurs. I think we can, fight to keep the spurs and fight to make sure we get a good deal. That's what I would be focused on before we are, talking about, kind of who's ponying up what. I think we need to look at how the city's going to benefit.
I know you mentioned that that's one of the things that would help increase our infrastructure and our growth. That's saying, how do you justify the investment for something like a Project Marvel over pressing needs like affordable housing and infrastructure improvements?
Well, so this is a key difference between myself and my opponent. I've been very clear that we need a lot more information about some basic questions. One, how much is it going to cost? We're a little bit closer there. Who's going to pay for it? And three, how is the community going to benefit? When we don't have nearly enough information on those three questions, I don't think it is appropriate to be talking about levels of funding, especially city funding, right? My opponent has said clearly already, and it's a San Antonio Express News survey, that he wants city funding to pay for up to 50% of this. I mean, we don't even know, is 50% 1 billion? Is it 2 billion? Like, what is that? And oh, by the way, what are we getting for that? So I think, look, one day we're spending too much money in his eyes, the next day he's ready to sign us up for 50% of the cost for the new arena. I think it's really important, and I have, you could ask, Gina, how did you answer that? Well, I didn't answer it, right? Because until we have information on these very basic things, we shouldn't be talking about what taxpayers are putting up. Taxpayers for too long on these deals have been last to know and first to pay, and I would lead in a very different way.
I mean, we've seen conversations happening about infrastructure improvements that include things like the Missions Baseball Stadium, which of course controversially is expected to displace the soap factory residents. How do you balance companies coming in or growth like that and keeping people in San Antonio that have always lived here?
Well, on the soap factory in particular, that when I read what happened to those folks, and really unfortunately the lack of transparency and lack of communication with them about what was going to happen, especially those folks that frankly had just moved in, I was very, concerned. One of my earliest memories actually is sharing a queen size bed, me, my mom, my sister, and my grandmother, as we were waiting for our Section 8 voucher number to be called. And so I know the importance of affordable housing and housing affordability in general in our community. I think it's important that when we're looking at the development of downtown, we're looking at a really broad mix of housing, right? Downtown, we have the opportunity right now to make sure that we don't go the way of San Francisco, we don't go the way of Austin, right? It can't be just a place where millionaires live. And we certainly don't want a downtown where you just have a bunch of, super expensive condos and then micro units. Like, we need a broad mix of folks. There's no reason why folks that are working the valet at the Hotel Valencia or that are working at the hospital should have to drive all the way to nearly Medina County to be able to afford something. I think when we're looking at the downtown, we've got to make sure we've got a good mix of housing, and also, I think as importantly, look at how smart housing policies can help us address some of the other challenges in our community, like schools closing, right? I sat down with the leaders, SAISD leaders, and asked them, hey, how could the city have helped to avoid, some of these school closures? And they said very quickly, affordable housing, right? When folks are priced out of communities, that means that those families are not staying. That means there's less kids needed for that school, and then schools close. So I think we can be thoughtful about, family units, affordable family units downtown that are not only good for folks that are living downtown, but also to make sure that we don't see any more schools close in our community.
Violent crime and gun violence are ongoing concerns. What's your stance on balancing increased public safety with community-based reforms?
Well, I think it's, as a veteran, as a national security leader, I know a leader's number one job is to keep our community safe. And so I think it's really important that our first responders are well resourced, they've got the training, and also it's a readiness issue as well. And this is something I saw firsthand at the Department of the Air Force as the number 2, the undersecretary, which is, if you've got, for example, if you've got 10 trucks, but only 8 of them are operational, then you don't have 10 trucks, right? So it's important that the equipment is at a level that is sufficient to meet the need in our community. And again, we're growing quite quickly, excuse me. So I think we balance, there are no-fail missions, which is keeping our people safe. I think it's also really important, especially as we enter into a very difficult fiscal environment, that we are minimizing any risks, especially to our most vulnerable communities. I've been to the Walker Ranch Senior Center, and I was there in January, and it just happened to be when they were doing their birthday celebrations. So there were over 200 some odd seniors there. That was their lunch, and those were gone, they said, in like 15 minutes. So I know it's an important social, resource, but I know it's also a really important, frankly, kind of nutritional resource for our seniors. So I want to make sure we're minimizing risk to vulnerable communities. I also want to make sure that we are minimizing any long-term risks as a result of these of changes in the services. A key part of that will be communicating with the city and with our neighbors about what those changes might look like, why they're happening, how long they might be happening, and what we're doing to make sure our community is fiscally sound.
Given your support for data-driven budgeting and law enforcement, how would you address concerns about public safety while ensuring accountability within SAPD?
Well, I think, look, transparency leads to accountability, and accountability leads to trust. I think, just not unlike the military community, our law enforcement is held to a very high standard, and they're revered in our community. And I think it's really important, and I shared this, when I sat down with folks, is, when that trust is betrayed, folks need to be held accountable, and that's what people expect. And I think actually, even in the military, when somebody betrays their trust, you want those folks to be held accountable, because you want there to be as strong of a trust as can be between the community and those that are there to keep them safe and protected, right? If that trust breaks down, then our community is less safe, right? We want people to trust their first responders, which is why I've been very clear as well that I do not support using our local law enforcement as ICE agents. I think that is a disastrous approach. I think that would actually make us less safe. I'm very concerned that my opponent refuses to answer that very basic question. I'm concerned about, when I hear about schools, families frankly not being comfortable sending their young kids to school based on, ICE potentially being there when they are not going to Mass. Spanish Mass in particular, right? At my own church, at Santo Niño de Cebu on Rigsby, my Mass is at noon, the Tagalog Mass, and the Spanish Mass is at 2. And there's a noticeable drop in attendance there. And it's because people are fearful of potentially what might happen and how they might be targeted there. I think that is so unfortunate. And as well, I want our local law enforcement focused on violent crimes, right? I want them focused on those things that are really going to keep our city safe, not, deporting hardworking people or deporting abuelitas. Let's keep the main thing. Let's keep our community safe.
San Antonio politics have faced increasing scrutiny around developer influence and closed-door decisions. I know you've, in the past, also critiqued the city for this. Will you commit to strengthening lobbying, transparency, or closing campaign finance loopholes?
Sure, yes. I'm the one on my website. I've talked about what I want to do in the first 100 days, which is ensure that we've got a non-disclosure agreement policy that allows us to do city business and brings people in at the appropriate time, in this case, decision makers. I worked in the intelligence community. I know there's a way in which you protect information, but ensure that decision makers have access to it when they need it. As well, so my first 100 days, I've talked about the things I want to do. I think as importantly is how I want to do them. So I've shared every month, I want to have an in-person town hall, and we'll rotate that throughout the city councils, right? I think it's really important, especially because our city is so economically segregated. It's really important to go into the various neighborhoods and frankly see people eye to eye, and they'll share, I'm sure, what as they have as I've gone into various neighborhood association meetings and so forth, which is, what's working well, what's not working well, and certainly their recommendations to improve things in our community and in our city. So I look forward to those, and I think that's what people expect, and that's what they deserve.
Some quick questions here, a little bit of a pivot. Have you voted in the past 4 city elections?
No, so I missed one. I missed the last one. I was traveling with family, and I ordered my mail-in ballot. It did not arrive in time.
But you did vote this past May, I'm imagining.
Yes, of course.
And how long have you lived in San Antonio? I know there's always conversations about both you and your opponent about this, so let's make the record clear. How long have you resided in San Antonio?
So the only time that I have not lived in San Antonio is when I was serving my country. I'm very proud of my record of public service. My record of public service matches roughly a large percentage of our community. 16% of our population is in fact either active duty or a veteran. So I, after my assignment at the Pentagon, which is summer of 23, I came back, but proud of all of my service all across the country.
We mentioned this a little bit, but with San Antonio facing a large budget deficit, what 3 things would you cut to save money?
So yeah, we were asked this previously, and I think we shortchanged the conversation and frankly what voters are owed without a really thoughtful review of the information and the impacts of any changes. So we had a kind of a cursory conversation with Eric that just kind of gave us some of the atmospherics really, but I'm not going to commit to anything unless I understand fully the data and fully the impacts, and then can communicate to people, why those folks, we as a council have decided those are in the best interest of the community.
This is in light of the election night media avoidance incident, I know. How do you address concerns about transparency in your interactions with the press and public?
Well, I'm sitting with you right now. I think we've had several interviews, and I would ask people to look at my record. My attendance at the forums is actually the best. All of those were open to the public, right? And I would rephrase your characterization, because I did engage with the press. And if you remember, many press actually joined me as we were celebrating with the city at the Flambeau Parade. So, look forward to more of these conversations, and again, making sure that folks can go to my website, look at the plans, and welcome answering any of those questions.
Both you and your opponent are technically, you guys have held appointed positions, but they haven't been in city and county government. You guys have obviously been labeled as outsiders. What's your response to the public? Do you expect some challenges walking into the San Antonio mayor's office, of course, if you win? And what's your response to that?
Yeah, well, as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, I managed a $173 billion budget, so 40 times the size of the city budget. I led 600,000 folks, and so I know, frankly, how to make sure the budget reflects the priorities, make sure we're executing that appropriately. And I think, as importantly, make sure that we are addressing the concerns all throughout our community. I've shared, one of my formative experiences is when I showed up to Boston University with an ROTC scholarship, and had to sign a piece of paper that said I will not engage in homosexual behavior, because don't ask, don't tell was the policy at the time. And I knew what that meant, right? My opportunity to get an education, my opportunity to serve our country, my opportunity to die for our country, those go away. Just because at the time we didn't have enough leaders with the courage to say anybody ready and willing to serve their country should have the opportunity to do so. And that experience certainly motivated me when I would then serve as the under to make sure I was knocking down barriers for folks so they could serve to their full potential. It also just reminded me that, when you are in charge, when you're making decisions, always question, who am I not hearing from and why am I not hearing from them? I think, if you look at just how economically segregated our community is, I think that is in part because we have not had enough leaders, really focused on ensuring we're doing the most for as many in our community as possible. So I know why that's important. As somebody that grew up on the far west side of San Antonio and attended all public Title I public education schools, that it's important that we're serious about the trajectory of our community, that we do that. My record in public service, and folks can go read about it, my record in public service has been about ensuring our folks can serve to their full potential and we're making smart investments. My opponent's record in public service includes being sued by civil rights groups when he was the Secretary of State, for example, for being willing to share very personal voter information that the League of Women Voters and the NAACP said would have made those voters susceptible to voter intimidation. And this was, again, something that Rolando Pablos was willing to share with the Trump voting commission. And in Texas, that commission really focused on voters with a Hispanic surname, right? Again, he was also sued for his attempts to make it harder for people to register to vote. So, his record in public service has been about keeping people down. Mine has been about uplifting people, helping people to serve to their full potential. And that's how I intend to serve and lead and be a mayor for all.
So do you expect any learning curve, though, when you walk in?
I think there's always going to be, you've got to learn the personalities, you've got to learn certainly, where there might be some efficiencies to be realized, but, I feel, quite comfortable with that.
That saying, San Antonio has made waves in taking a stance on very national, more controversial topics, most recently the Reproductive Justice Fund. What is your stance on, as mayor, about taking a stance on these things? Is that something you'd like to continue in the future?
There are more people that live in San Antonio than in 11 states. So we can do a lot of good for a lot of people. And I would be focused on making sure that we're moving our city forward and we are not selling the most vulnerable in our community out. We can work on job creation, we can work on economic development, but I think it's really important that we speak truth to power when there are either issues at the federal level or at the state level that are making it harder for us to grow the way that we want to grow and make sure that we are as strong as an economy and a community as possible. We have to do that in the interest of making sure, because look, part of that is like maybe giving them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, when you passed this law, maybe you didn't expect that OBGYNs wouldn't want to train here or wouldn't want to come here, but now this is what it looks like. And as a result of that, that makes us less economically competitive, right? I mean, when company X is looking at, hey, where do I place my folks? And one of their considerations is healthcare providers. If you're looking at city X and that, doctor to patient ratio is 1 to X, and then when you look at San Antonio, it's double that, then, certainly they're going to consider the quality of life factors for their folks as anybody would. So I think it's just really being, upfront about where we collaborate, what's working well, and what are the things that are constraining our ability to grow the way we want to.
Why are you the best candidate for the job?
This for me is all about San Antonio. This is about making sure the community that raised me, that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country, that my hometown is well led, right? It is a very special community that can take a kid from Title I public education and invest in them and allow them to grow up to be the Undersecretary of the Air Force. There's a lot of talent in our community. We've got a lot of great opportunities, and I think a lot of that is going to be based on us achieving that is going to be based on who leads our city. And I've got the record to be able to do that and make sure that we move our city forward and lead with everybody in mind.
Is there anything I missed you'd like to add?
Well, please remind folks, early voting starts on the 27th. You've got to make a plan to vote.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.